one morning I took off in a DC-9 from Eagle Farm Airport, and I had a friend of mine doing the parallel Ansett flight, and we were going from Brisbane, Rocky, Townsville, Rocky, Sydney, I think it's the way it went. And I said, the one who wins the most legs doesn't have to buy the beer in Sydney. And Dick said, you're on. I knew Dick pretty well. And so I got away pretty quickly out of Brisbane. I talked them into it, got them going, jumped in the aeroplane. There was 5 knots down when taking off to the north. I said, that'll do, it'll save all the taxiing out. So I took off with 5 knots downwind, which was within the limits, and headed flat out up towards Rocky, and doing it in a pretty quick time. Landed at Rocky, straight in, another 5 knot downwind, but going to the north, and had all our ground crew organised to turn the aircraft around quickly, because I didn't want to buy the beers in Sydney. So the aeroplane, we unloaded, everything was right, and the first officer on that flight is a person you may recall from the pilot's dispute. His name was Brian McCarthy, and Brian came up to me and he said, we think we've got a stowaway in a box down there, and looking at me, you get all the money, what are you going to do about it? And so I said, I'll see about that, and we went down and I talked severely to the box. The box didn't move, so I said to McCarthy, go and get the handcuffs, the baton, the fire axe and the gun, and we'll shoot him out, chop him out, sorry, not shoot him out, chop him out. We don't have a gun, but we had all the other implements, and away he went. And this man obviously didn't want to get shot and chopped, so he opened up the side of the box and came out. And I looked at him and he was a bit hyperventilated, in a poor state. And I said, who are you and what are you doing? And he said, give me a go, mate, I've got no money and I'm trying to see my family. I instantly felt a little bit, you know, a little bit endeared to him, and I looked around and I looked in the box, and inside the box was brand new telephone books, bottles that he'd been to the toilet in, torches, breathing tubes, and then I saw a vast pile of money, vast pile, about $1 million I think it was, and of course what it was a regular cash supply that every aeroplane out of Brisbane that morning, or every Australian or TAA airline, had a cash supply, you know, one going to Mackay, one going to Townsville, one going to Cairns. And so me being the practical joker said, what do you mean there's not enough money? You got a lot here. You know, I knew what was going on. With that he started to take off, but he was a bit wobbly, and the porter went under the aeroplane and got caught this part of his back on the flat DME aerial. And I remember postulating about, is the DME aerial going to break, or is the clothes going to come off? And I ran round the nose, and just as the porter got to him, he grabbed his boxer shorts and I jumped on his back. And I was quite a bit lighter than I am today, but he didn't like me being on his back, and I heard ribs break or something like that. And with that, here's 100 sets of eyes in our aircraft looking down at me, sitting on top of this chap with a porter with his pants half down, and Dick McIntosh going by making rude gestures to me as he taxis out, knowing that he's won at least this sector of the flight. And so we put the man in a wheelchair. That was McCarthy's idea, chained into a wheelchair when you could wheel him around. It's quite a good idea. And I couldn't get anybody to come out to take over this man and the money on the aeroplane. And this is all pre-Fitzgerald. I'll leave that to your imagination. Fitzgerald being an inquiry into the government at some stage. and they wouldn't come out. And there was a bomb scare on the branch where the money was supposed to go. So eventually a rough-looking character came up. He had hair out of here, a tie over here that didn't look like it fit him, big man in a suit. And he said, by whose authority is this man handcuffed? And I said, by my authority. And he said, and I said, who are you? And he said, I'll ask the questions, this big rough policeman. And I said, no, I'll ask the questions, who are you? And he wouldn't answer. So the Commonwealth Police, in those days we had Commonwealth policemen. Commonwealth policeman said, can I help you, Captain? And I said, yes. Escort him off the aerodrome. So he picked this big walloper up and away he went. And they said, what are we doing now? And I said, ring the inspector, tell them I need him out here now. And the inspector came out. And the inspector said, can Detective Sergeant so-and-so rejoin the airfield? I said, under your jurisdiction, yes. And I gave this inspector the keys, to the handcuffs. I want him to take the money, I want to get on and do my job. He gave them to Detective Sergeant so-and-so and he unhandcuffed him. And I thought, this is a bit strange, And I said, you've just unhandcuffed that man and he's already made one attempt to get away. When he went the first time, he was totally hyperventilated. He's not now. What are you going to do if he runs away? He said, I'll catch him. I said, you won't catch him. He's thin, you're fat. You'll never catch him. He said, they'll shoot him. And there was a main necklace there back for the money. And I said, I drove an armoured truck. I got $50 a day in free bullets and I wouldn't shoot anybody for $50 a day unless it was going to save my life. He said, neither will we, mate. This is back. And the civvy pass, he said, handcuff him again. So I re-handcuffed him. But there was something funny going on because I went out to the aeroplane and this detective sergeant beat me out there and said, don't touch that, that's our exhibit. And this is the big pile of money. And I suddenly woke up, so I said, I got McCarthy, the airport manager, another person, I want you to write a complete description. If you've got a camera, I want you to take a photo of exactly what's there. There was something funny going on. And with that, everybody performed the way I wanted. We loaded the aeroplane up and got out of there, and that was the end of that thing. But they were painters and dockers from Melbourne, and why they had to act so quickly and they hyperventilated was if they loaded the money into a non-pressurised area, they wanted them to get it before they expired, get back into the box. There was one box missed an aeroplane. It was down in Eagle Farm. There was one box on the 727 going out to Mount Isa. I had enough time to think about that and say, don't anybody make any fuss. Let them collect the box, and then you've got more people in the thing. But when Barry Gorn got to Townsville, well, Townsville's Air Force, so there's Air Force, Girl Guides, Boy Scouts, the Sea Scouts, the whole lot were there, and there's no chance of anybody being caught other than the man inside the box. But the whole thing was foiled, and that was a robbery. And I just put this antidote in. I flew with 2 tons of gold from Brisbane to Melbourne about a week later. And I started to think the worth of 2 tons of gold, even at that day's rates. And I felt very, very lonely because you're up at 35,000 feet and it'd be very easy to destroy an aeroplane, watch the wreckage come down and then claim the gold, because the gold had survived pretty well. It didn't go off and I had a safe flight, but these things make you wonder.